the older I get, and the more I realize how much it has. It just surfaces a lot of times. It was happening around Easter time, and especially around that time, it feels like it always kind of has a greater impact. But it's both the event and the things that surrounded that, but then also just this guy's life. He died when he was 20. I only knew him a few years, but that's all it took for God to just use him in some incredible ways in my life to understand God better, to understand our place and role on the planet better. This full picture. And maybe the biggest piece was the passion that this guy had for worship. And to date, I've never known anybody before or since. I've never known anybody like this. Antoine, he loved to worship, and it wasn't a song, and it wasn't some act of service. It was like this thing that was in him that was always just kind of at a tipping point, boiling point, and it just spewed out. and when you were around him, like, you were automatically drawn in to worship his Jesus because his passion was so intense. And I remember being in a lot of different places, and we would be in the middle of prayer, or we'd be in the middle of studying God's Word, and something would come up, and it would just kind of trigger something in him, and he would remember a song, and it would start to roll out. And the dude couldn't sing that well, and neither could we. But all of a sudden, we would start to sing and connect with God in these songs that are really prayers, but they were from his heart, and you could just see it. In fact, this guy, when he moved to the town that I met him, the town that he went to school in, he found a lady in town who could sew and asked her to sew him some little flags, some handheld flags. And then he would go out and find some place that he could be alone, usually out at the lake, and he would roll down the windows and crank up the stereo and turn on his favorite worship songs, and he would sing at the top of his lungs and dance with these flags to the Lord. Just him and Jesus. And that was something that he just did, and I tried it. I'm not very good at it, but he did that, and it was like for the audience of one, just him and Jesus. And some people found out about it, and they asked him to do it in like a church service. And he did it kind of reluctantly, and then afterwards he told me, "Man, I'm not doing that anymore." It was almost like it somehow cheapened it for him to be around other people, because this was this intimate thing that he had between him and his God. And it just impacted me, And after he died, when we were a bunch of guys getting together, kind of making our way to his hometown for his funeral, one of the guys shows up and he says, "Hey, y'all aren't going to believe this, but this new worship song came out, and it's like it was written for Antoine." And we said, "What are you talking about?" And he took his CD, and he queued it up, and he played this song for us. And you probably know the words of it. I think there's been a movie that's made about it recently. I honestly have had trouble listening to it in the years since because it brings up a lot of emotions, so I'll just read it for you. But imagine, this is right after we're on the way to the funeral, and this song plays. "I can only imagine what it would be like when I walk," it's a prayer, "when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine." And as soon as we listened to it, we all looked at each other and said, "Man, Antoine's dancing." I don't know what we'd be doing, but I'm 100% sure that Antoine's dancing. But it's a good question. What would you do in his presence? And just kind of a side thought, he's in the room this morning, right? And to the degree that we embrace it and recognize it and collectively join in together, the more we experience it. But he's in this place. And this series that we begin today is going to focus really on this whole idea of what it means to worship. And worship is service, and worship, God is with you in any place that you are when you're alone. He's there, and worship is possible. It's more than just music. But for the focus of this series for the next 4 weeks, I really want to kind of hone in on what it means on this dedicated time that we have on Sunday mornings, where we say that we want to come in this place that's set apart for the purpose of worship and experience and worship and experience His presence and worship our God. And you know, the truth is, in most places, and I don't know that we're a lot different, it's a broken piece. You know, worship is just a few songs before or after the message. It's just music. But we all know deep inside of us that it's so much more than that. And recently I was in a conversation with somebody that said the maturity of most believers is hindered. And the thing that hinders it most are kind of two areas, two perspectives. One, their identity. And two, their understanding of His authority, of God's authority. Who they are and who God is. If we're broken somehow in one of those two pieces, then it begins to hinder our ability to worship and follow Him. And that's the reason we've named this series, Who Am I? The first 2 weeks we're going to focus on our identity, who we are, and then kind of that second 2 weeks kind of flip the question He's asking us, who am I? And we're going to focus on His authority, on who God is. And one reason that we're going to do it this way, and just forgive me, I've discovered about myself that I'm a if-then kind of person. And as I describe this, some of you guys are going to go, yeah, that's me. Some of you may be totally different than this, and that's cool and all. I guess you're okay still. But I am an if-then kind of person. Like, if 1 plus 1 equals 2, and if in my life or in your life, or you try to tell me that 1 plus 1 equals 3, then we're going to have issues. And you know, you find out what you really love and believe by the things that get you most passionate or make you mad, really, you know. And nothing makes me, when I look back over my life, the things that have made me the maddest always have to do with when somebody says, this is true, and it equals this, and it doesn't equal that. Or they say, or I've said, you know, I believe this, I want this, but I do this, and that doesn't equal that. It just drives me up the wall. And growing up, anytime that would happen, our family had this little saying. They would go, if somebody said something and it didn't match up, they would go, now, brown cow, brown cow. Has anybody ever heard that before? I see a few heads. First service, there were a lot of heads shaking. I really, later on, I just thought that was normal talk for everybody, and I was around a bunch of people, and I said, if somebody did that, and I got hot, and I said, now, brown cow, and the whole group went, what? What are you talking about a cow for, you know? Yeah, but it was a way to just call somebody on it. Hey, 1 plus 1 equals 2. It doesn't equal 3, so you better take that statement back. Well, the 1 plus 1 equals 2 here is if we understand who we are, really, and we understand who He is and His authority, then the automatic reaction is that we're compelled to worship the way that my buddy Antoine did. It's a deep thing that we can't stop. And so that's what I'm asking over these 4 weeks that would happen in this place, that we would dive into it. And the place that we're really going to look is Isaiah chapter 6. In fact, every week we're going to look at this passage. We'll launch from there to different verses and different sections. But Isaiah chapter 6 is this incredible picture of Isaiah, this prophet who is in the presence of God. And there are other pictures we get of prophets and the people who encounter, but this is a beautiful picture in all 4 sections of the thing that we really need to talk about, of who we are and who He is. It's all really talked about in this encounter that Isaiah has with God. And so I'm just going to read it, and again, every week I'm going to read it and maybe highlight a different section. But every time that I read it, please just read along with me and let it speak to you, because there's a lot of powerful things that happen in this encounter. So here we go. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1 to verse 8. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of His robe filled the temple. Above Him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost. I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my lips and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And then I said, Here am I, send me. I mean, imagine this picture and this crazy seraphim creature and all the things that are happening, and this voice that's so loud that the whole place is shaking. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, literally, it's the word that means set apart. So set apart, set apart, set apart, set apart in his power, set apart in his purity, set apart other than this incredible God. And then what is Isaiah's reaction? Woe is me. I'm a man of unclean lips. And woe is us. I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King. Woe is me. It's almost as if you get this feeling that, he may have walked into this situation with kind of living in the shadows, that the things that were in his life and the things that were in his culture, maybe he had explained those things away or given some excuse or covered them up in some way and made some reasoning why those things were okay. But now all of a sudden, in the presence of God, in his light, all those things become exposed. In fact, in 1 John chapter 1, verse 5, it says, God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. In fact, every one of these encounters, if we go through Scripture and look at each one, this picture of God's bright, bright, bright light is there. This light that exposes all the darkness, that takes away all the shadows, that reveals everything that's there. All of a sudden, this light is there, and Isaiah experiences that, and he says, Woe is me. That's the reaction. When I say that, is there something to you, if you were in that situation, that when that bright light shined on your life, is there an area that you would go, woe is me? There is for me. When there's a lot of regrets that I have as I look back over my life, but there's an area, in Psalm 19, it talks about these 2 different types of sins. It talks about hidden faults, those things that maybe we stumble into and mess up, that are sin, just the same. But then it also talks about presumptuous sin. It's those things that we knew good and well, that God had commanded against that he had reasoning behind it, we had embraced it, and then at the same time, we chose to walk in that very thing that we knew was sin. And I look back over my life, there's a time that there was something like that I made the choice. Last week before last, Terry and I celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary. Now see, if I had said 20, there probably would have been some more woohoo. And I was thinking about that the other day, that, we make a big deal out of 20 and 25. We really like round numbers. But man, 21's a big deal. 1 is a big deal. I mean, it does feel like the people around us and the people that we've known that were married about the time that we were, it almost feels like one of those war scenes where we're all running and the bullets are flying and we're looking to our left. Boom! What happened to them? Oh, man! And then we see somebody over there struggling. I mean, that's what it feels like. 21 years. 21 years, 1 year. We made it another year. That's a big deal. And that I can honestly, with all of my heart, say that our friendship is the strongest that it's ever been. She's my friend, my best friend. Our romance is the strongest there. I love this girl, man. She's hot, and I'm hot for her. And that continues to grow. Like that I can say that all those things are true and not lie this morning. That's really, really, really big, And I just wanted to make that point. Not that it has anything to do with Isaiah or worship or anything else. Not that my wife is hot, but just that marriage is a big deal, and we need to make much of it in this place, right? Because it is. And it gets shut down a lot, and it needs to be made much of. And I'm just really thankful. But we had a really rocky start to this 21 years, and we started dating in high school, and we were really different people in high school. And I was this guy who had done a good job projecting the persona that I was the dude that you wanted your daughter to date. I just did things right. I shook guy. When I would meet somebody's father, I would look him in the eye and shake his hand. My dad had taught me well. I would go sometimes to the party, but I would carry my own ice chest with IBC cream soda, which I had given the name Brass Monkey just to make it cool. I introduced my boys to it the other day. I was like, dude, have you ever had Brass Monkey? Played the Beastie Boys song just so they would get the full picture of what this was. And they're like, man, Dad, this is incredible. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. And that was my ticket. I was the guy that was at the party with his own ice chest of Brass Monkey. And in fact, at our wedding, the groom's table was a big IBC bottle and an ice chest full of Brass Monkey. It was a party. But anyway, so I was that guy. And when I first, Terry moved to town, and she was dating this other dude. And this is how much it was like that. We're going somewhere, and this dude asks if they can ride with me, and they jump in the car. Terry gets in the back seat. He sits up front, and for the whole way there, he's looking over at me going, Mark, I respect you so much, man. Man, you just do things right. You're taking stances, man. I'm just amazed. I think you're so incredible. I was looking in that rearview mirror like, girl, you hearing this? Because this right here is good stuff, I mean, I just had I was trying to do things right, but I had fooled a lot of people because they couldn't really see in my heart, or what was motivating a lot of those things. So then Terry and I started dating, and from the beginning, this belief that God had created this incredible thing of relationship with man and woman and sex, and had an intention for it in marriage, and why that made sense that only two people in the context of marriage, and that maturity and that commitment, that worked, and that it was beautiful in that context, but any perversion of that, then it started to break and cause all kinds of trouble to the person and both people and everybody else around it, and sin before God. I believed that. And so we talked about it on the front end, and we made commitments. And we started to live out and walk in those commitments. And then I had a couple of bad weeks for a teenager. Now, it wasn't bad. It was just a regular week. But for a teenager, it seemed like it was catastrophic. And I was on on a lawnmower, mowing our yard, and I totally blamed that on my Walkman I was listening to Boys to Men, which is just, totally blame Boys to Men. But yeah, I made a decision that day. I made a decision that I was going to sin against Terry, I was going to sin against God, and I was going to do the very thing that he said do not do. And I made a decision. Went out that night and began to walk in a path of sin that caused all kinds of heartache and pain, ended up in a horrible breakup between us, scars for us both. Sin against God and that break of relationship that I had chosen and walked in, all of this horrible baggage and pain because I chose to go my own way and to sin, full well knowing it, presumptuous sin. Woe is me. But hold up, woe is us. Because I could pick a lot of different topics to talk about our culture today and say, hey, this is an area where we struggle and where sin is prevalent, and if the light of God shined upon us, it would be revealed. But does it even require a light to bring attention to our sex-saturated, porn-addicted, hookup culture? Is it even needed? We know it as soon as you walk out this door. If you flip on your television at all today, you're gonna have to turn your head and close your eyes and protect yourself from an inundated culture. In fact, just a few statistics that have just recently, I kind of have seen some of these things that the numbers say that 2 out of 3 of the guys in this room, inside the church walls, 2 out of 3 of those guys are looking at pictures and watching X-rated videos weekly. The numbers outside of the church don't really change any. They don't get any higher. 2 out of 3 in the world, and an ever-increasing number of women that are doing the same thing. But this is what's really scary about today and for our future. I've got a couple of teenage boys, boys 15 to 20, that over 80% are engaged in it weekly and are watching all kinds of perversions of it. Woe is us. Just kind of a side note, we're going to take this seriously because I feel like it's not talked about very much, and leadership is already making plans to do some things in the fall where we're going to train small group leaders and train guys to help one another attack this thing. So because we don't talk about it, but it's an epidemic. Woe is us. If the light shined on your life, because when you come into the presence of God, that's what happened. His light shines. What does it reveal? But then also, I just think about the light of God shining and what it would reveal. And there's some things that it would reveal about me. When have you ever gotten ready for a party and you're like, you got one mirror that's kind of in the shade, in the shadows, and you're like, man, I look good. And then you walk into that one room, or you get to the place and they've got fluorescent lights, and you walk in and you're like, man, what just happened, It's always that joke about the girl you meet at the party. I'm not going to tell that one, but you see her in the light and you're like, man, what did I do? That when God's light shines, it shows it. Well, one of the things for me are some things that I've always been ashamed of. I've got the reason I've always shaved my head is because I've got a Eddie Munster chia pet do. And when it grows like a chia pet, and it comes down with a V in the front like Eddie Munster. And I've talked before, I got this sweat problem that I sweat profusely from the underarms. And I have to constantly battle it, and it's like this thing that I've always, from the time I was this tall, I've been ashamed of. There are other things about me that I've always been ashamed of, because what if you found out I was human? What if you discovered that I wasn't perfect? What then? What breakdown and catastrophic thing would happen if you knew that I wasn't God? You would find out that I'm just like you, and you're just like me, and you're not perfect either. That there is a God, and you're not Him. And that's what seems to happen to Isaiah, is that all of a sudden he's in the presence of God, and he goes, woe is me. This holy, 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 set-apart God is not like me. See, worship starts to break down because somehow we've built ourselves up enough or brought God low enough that we feel like, hey, really? Am I compelled to worship something that's like me? No. But when His light shines and you begin to see you in truth and accept it and confess it, then all of a sudden He becomes highly exalted, because He is not those things. He is perfect. And so it feels like the place that we have to start is just this heart of brokenness and recognition of our imperfections. The things that we chose and the things that we didn't choose, that it's just the reality of who we are. And somewhere in the middle of that brokenness, we start to see God rightly. This one night, we were in a Bible study where Antoine was there, and we had begun to confess some sins, some things that we were all dealing with, and it got, I don't know if you've ever been in one of these places, but people were being honest and authentic, and we began to really share things that we had kept secret. And we began to be really broken that these things are really hideous. We tried to cover them up, but we had to confess, man, these things are ugly, and we were sad. And Antoine said, hey, let's go outside. In fact, I don't even think he asked. I think he just walked out the door, and we were all like, all right. Walk outside, and he starts singing the song, and I wish I could remember which worship chorus it was, but it was one that just talked about God's incredible grace in the midst of the place to meet us where we were. And the reason I remember that night more than anything, because it started right as we started to sing it, it started to sprinkle and just rain a little bit. And something about that sweet rain just felt like that was, it was like God's grace was just, it was there. That we had admitted the truth about who we were, and he was right there to meet us with his incredible love and grace. And I just think that's who our incredible God is, and that's what, when we talk about who we are, that's what next week we'll have to focus on. That's who he is. He's not like us in any way, and especially in this thing that people who would spit in his face and sin against him directly, that he would still love and die and give his life for them. That's godlike. That's holy. That's not us. We don't do that kind of thing. So we're doing a few things different through this series. You may have noticed we started, the MC started at the beginning. We did a couple songs, and we did all that to really kind of to make sure we have plenty of time on the back end. I tried to go a little bit shorter today, so we could leave a little more time on the back end for worship and reflection. And so I'm gonna challenge you over the next few minutes and three different songs that you would just really engage and think about the things that I talked about this morning, this reaction that Isaiah had, what it would mean to be in the presence of God. There's the opportunity for communion, giving, as always. But I'm asking God that over these 4 weeks, beginning today, that he would do something significant in our hearts and in our church. So please join with me in that. Let's pray. Father, I love you, and I am desperate in my asking that you would let your light shine, and that is a dangerous request, because part of me doesn't want you for the broken pieces of my life to be revealed. Part of me has spent a lifetime trying to protect those things and keep them secret and to myself. And I'm asking you, Father, that you would take this place to a whole nother level of authenticity before you and before one another, that we could begin at this place of worship, that we actually understand who we are in light of who you are, and that this would just be a sweet beginning of a new heart of worship that would be true in this place. Father, I ask you that you would do that to your glory. Amen.